Hi again guys, and welcome to another top 10 countdown list for Gran Turismo 6, and this time it's for my personal selection of the 10 best all-round wagons, or estate cars as we call them here in the UK, on Gran Turismo 6. Now these particular vehicles are more varied and also more rare on Gran Turismo. There aren't that many wagons to work with. You've only got around 15 in total, and the ones that are there are pretty good. Now all of them are pretty good cars, and technically we could have made a top 15, but as some of them are so similar to each other, some even being variations of the same car, there was no real point in doing that. So we're sticking to a top 10, which is of course the usual format, and as always, if you would like tune setups for all of these cars, or pretty much all of them, you can find those in the description below, or if you would like to hear more in-depth reviews for these vehicles, you can find those reviews in the playlist at the end of this video. But for now, let's get straight into the list. Kicking us off, first of all, in 10th place, I'm putting the Nissan Stagea, and in particular, the Autech version. Many people choose this version over the RS4 for obvious reasons. It's the more visually appealing model, it's more expensive, it seems to have better specs, and it's essentially the GTR version of the Stagea wagon. However, the reason why I'm placing this car in the 10th spot rather than higher on the list as the RS4 model is going to be is because, as good as it is to look at, this is actually not as good as the RS4 model. It certainly looks the part, but it has more weight to deal with, it's no quicker, and it is more expensive, so it's not really that great a choice. Next up, in 9th place, I'm putting a great sleeper wagon, the Subaru Legacy GTB. This is possibly the best sleeper wagon in the game because many people don't use it, many people never have. It's one of the relatively few older Legacy models on the game, and it is extremely rapid. It's not quite as lightweight or as nimble as the Impreza wagons, but in its own way, as a sleeper, it's a great car. Next up, in 8th place, I'm putting a very popular vehicle, the Mitsubishi Legnum VR4 estate car or wagon. This is a great looking wagon, especially from the front. I personally wish that we had the sedan version on the game, which we did used to have on Gran Turismo, but for some reason we don't anymore. And this is kind of to the Evo what the Legacy is to the Impreza. That slightly more sensible, slightly upmarket version with a few more luxuries and amenities that the Evo or the Impreza don't have. The unfortunate thing about the Legnum is that it just doesn't have the performance, in particular the top speed and also the top end power, that it deserves to have, especially compared to others on this list, but overall it's still a great wagon. In 7th place now, I'm putting perhaps a vehicle which is surprisingly not higher on the list, the older shape Audi RS6 Avant. The reason why this is lower on the list is because although yes, it is a monster in a straight line, around 260 miles per hour, it's got a huge amount of power, far more than most of the other cars here, but the handling is not that great. In fact, many of the other cars on this list can quite easily and quite handily beat this car around corners and around twisty tracks in general. It's a great vehicle in its own way, especially in a straight line, but for a 116 grand car, it's not quite as sharp around the track as you'd probably hope. Next up, in 6th, I'm putting the first Subaru Impreza of the list. This is the newer shape Impreza wagon, and this is just a great all-round machine. As with all of the Imprezas on the game, I would say it doesn't have as much power as it deserves to have, but that being said, with the power that it's got to work with, this is a really good car. I personally consider the Impreza wagons to actually have better handling than the sedan versions, but maybe that's just me. The price is fantastic, it's a great looking wagon, and it carries over every advantage of the sedan into a great looking estate car package. Returning to the Nissan dealership now for my 5th place pick. Of course, in 10th we had the Autech version, but now we have what I would say is the superior RS4 version of the Nissan Stagea. It's superior in most ways, in fact. It's more understated, which makes it more of a sleeper, it's cheaper, it's faster, and it's lighter. It doesn't quite have the torque of the Autech model, but what difference does that make when the advanced torque of the Autech doesn't really give it any kind of advantage? This is a great wagon, and the reason why it places higher than some, like the Legnum and the Impreza wagon, is because it does have an advantage in top-end performance, being as it is around a 220-225 mph wagon, even without the use of NOS or slipstream. In fourth place now, we are returning to the Subaru dealership for my top rated Impreza of this whole list. This Impreza, the 1999 shape wagon, I would say is the best Subaru wagon you can get. There are definitely people who would disagree with that, and I can understand why. But the reason why I would say this is the best one, and the reason why it's the highest Subaru on this list, is because I personally think that this is a superb wagon. It has the classic Subaru style, that hardcore rally edge off-road, but at the same time on-road it's so lightweight and has such fantastic handling. And actually, if this list were purely based on handling, I would put this car in number 1, because I do strongly believe that this Impreza wagon has the best handling of any estate car in the game. Probably shockingly to many people now, I'm putting in third place the most powerful and fastest wagon in the game, the newer shape Audi RS6. It's expensive, it's powerful, and it is dominatingly quick. In fact, it's one of the only wagons in the game that can genuinely take on supercars in a straight line. The top speed is monstrous, as is the acceleration, and the PP can go up as far as 665, which is insanely high. The reason why it's not even higher is because it's still a 1500 kilo vehicle even after being tuned. It is very expensive, and as great as it is in a straight line, like the older model, its sheer size and weight just prevents it from being the best of track cars, and the value for money does play a part, and at 166 grand, it is a big investment. In second place, perhaps a car that many people wouldn't have seen coming, the Toyota Caldina. This is one of the best sleeper cars in the game. I featured it in my top 10 sleeper car list, and for good reason. This car is totally undervalued by most players, and although technically you could say it's more of a minivan or a people carrier than a wagon, its predecessor, the older Caldina, was a pure wagon, and technically speaking you can still to some degree categorise this as a wagon as well, in very loose terms. Overall, this car can out-accelerate basically everything else on the list, even including the RS6. Not for top-end performance, but for low-end. The handling's incredible. Essentially, this is the Supra of minivans. And finally, rounding off our top 10 list in first place, I am putting what I consider to be the best wagon or estate car on Gran Turismo. And for a change, my personal favourite actually makes the number 1 spot, the Audi RS4 Biturbo, a 2.7 litre monster. The reason why I'm giving this car the first place spot is because it really does have it all. It's 40 grand, which is so much cheaper than the RS6's. The handling is superb, the weight is low, the power is over 700 horsepower, which easily allows it to blow all of the Subaru, Mitsubishi and Nissans out of the water. It can do 250 miles per hour, launch like a supercar, and it's just a perfect all-round package as far as wagons go. But that's it for my top 10 pick of estate cars on Gran Turismo. Which ones do you enjoy the most? But for now, I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.